I'm Jane Sawyer, and this is Jane Sawyer Makes a Mushroom Guide for Game of Shrooms. So last year I participated in an international art abandonment event called Game of Shrooms. This is an annual event where artists make mushroom-themed works and hide them around their area for strangers to find and keep free of charge. I made this paper mache mushroom guy for the event, and I actually filmed the whole process, but just kind of burnt out on the project and never edited the video together. With this year's Game of Shrooms event being just around the corner, it inspired me to finally finish putting this video together so I could share the project with you guys and maybe inspire you to make your own paper mache mushroom guide. So keep watching for the full tutorial. If you're interested in getting one of the mushrooms that I make for this year's event, make sure you keep watching until the end. I'm gonna hide one locally, but also ship one out to one of my YouTube subscribers, no matter where you are in the world. All right, enough talking, let's make a mushroom guide.
So I don't often leave my house, but when I do, I get myself a cup of tea, and I rinsed out my teacup and started taking it apart to use as a template for my mushroom stem pattern. To get the cup apart cleanly, I rolled up the rim, tore down the seam, and then gently pried off the bottom. The bottom was a little rough, so I cleaned that up with scissors, just following along the manufacturer's seam there, and then traced around that onto a cereal box to make a pattern. I used both a ruler on the straight lines and an eyeballing method on the curves to true up the lines I had just traced. I cut out that shape and then also cut out a circle the same size as the cup's lid to make a base for the stem. You'll notice that off camera I trimmed the cup shape a little bit shorter. I was going for kind of a stumpy looking mushroom, so I had to change the proportions of my original cup a little bit. I used some tacky glue to hold that together, and then I stuck on the base with a whole bunch of strips of masking tape. What would be the lip of the cup is actually going to become the bottom of the sculpture. To make the mushroom cap, I started with a hat sewing pattern I have. If you don't have a hat sewing pattern, you could always try tracing around a clothes iron. They're pretty much the same size and shape as this pattern piece. I traced out a shorter version of this shape, and then I cut glue tabs into what would have been the seam allowance. This will help me with assembly later. I used scissors and a knife to cut out everything as precisely as I could, and then I creased the glue tabs against a ruler. It took 5 of these shapes to make my mushroom cap. I assembled them with hot glue. It was a little bit finicky, but thankfully I had planned where the tabs and gaps would go in the pattern pieces, so I was able to wrestle them together fairly easily. And actually, if anyone wants access to this pattern, I can throw it up on my website. Just let me know if you're interested in the comments. Even though I did shorten the hat sewing pattern piece a little bit, I was finding my mushroom cap looked a little too umbrella-like. I set a Sharpie on top of a roll of masking tape so I could mark an even trim line around the piece. Then it was easy just to cut that off with a small pair of scissors. And then I stuck a circle of corrugated cardboard inside the cap. Finally, off camera, I cut an angle in the top of the stem so that the cap would tip upwards. You can see that angle right here. Here's how it looked when all the paper mache was dried. Next, let's build our mushroom a face. I always start building a face from the teeth and gums out. To make a foundation for the gums, I cut these 2 weird shapes out of a cereal box. I used hot glue to stick on some pre-baked polymer clay teeth. Next, I used teeny tiny strips of paper mache to wrap very carefully around the base of each tooth. These particular teeth were very close together, so I used a little tool here to help push the paper down sometimes and just tried to go slow and make sure I covered all the base. When they were all dry, I had a very fun set of mushroom dentures. I had to bend them a little bit to fit the curve of the mushroom stem. Some of the paper mache cracked, but that's okay. At this point, I realized you were going to be able to see inside the mushroom's mouth, so I needed to paint on the illusion of a tongue. I marked out the space and then painted that in with some craft acrylic. When that was dry, I could finally hot glue on my dentures. The edges were kind of rough, so I ended up smoothing this down with some more paper mache, but I probably could have skipped this part. Alright, now that the finicky part is done, we're going to build the rest of his face. I make lips by sandwiching a coil of paper towel inside some paper mache paper. You can see I do the top lip here, and then I'll slow down to show you the bottom lip. I take a bit of kitchen paper towel and just dampen that with some glue. And then I twist that into a coil. This is the piece that fleshes out the bottom lip. I tuck that coil into a long folded strip of paper mache paper and then wrap that over the teeth. Now that those main lip structures are in place, I can use strips of paper mache to cover any wrinkles and really secure everything down to the head. Here he is all dry. Hot glued some glass eyes on there, and I use a similar technique to the lips to make the eyelids. I fold over a bit of brown paper for the bottom eyelids. I use a slightly larger bit of paper for the upper eyelids. For nose, I used this little bean-shaped bit of paper mache and stuck it on with some white glue. Now, I could totally just leave it here, but I decided to add on a layer of paper clay. This strengthens the sculpture and gives an opportunity to add a little bit more detail, but this step is totally optional and you can skip it. This little pasta roller is a great little tool for making thin sheets of clay. A damp green kitchen scrubby works really well for raking out some of the lumps and bumps. When the paper clay was dry, I used a bit of 5-minute epoxy to attach the cap to the stem. Hot glue would probably work here too. When I started this project, I knew I wanted my mushroom to have gills. I just think this is the neatest looking part of a mushroom, and it presents a really interesting construction challenge that I wanted to tackle. So I started cutting out gills from some bits of craft foam that I had. I put a layer of silicone adhesive into the underside of the cap so I could just plop the gills in there. And then, since I had the silicone out anyways, I used it to make some dots on top of the cap. I kind of like this texture I got with the silicone. I might see what other ways I can use it on some projects in the future.
Before before we get on to painting this mushroom guy, I want to tell you the story behind this t-shirt that I'm wearing. I had posted a clip on Instagram of me making some mini books by tearing apart an old novel, and somebody was really pissed that I had torn apart a book, and so they left this sort of nasty comment saying that I was not a real artist. And you know, they were trying to be mean, but I thought, well, what a huge freaking relief. If I'm not a real artist, I don't have to take myself seriously. I don't have to do production work to sell. I don't have to stick to one media or style. I can just make what I want, when I want, how I want, and share that all with you guys. In fact, the whole time I've been making stuff, I've never felt like I need to try to be a real artist or do things the right way. In fact, being a fake artist is way more fun than trying to be a real one. So I made these t-shirts, they say Fake Artist Craft Club, make unreal art. If you're interested in getting one for yourself, you can find them along with mugs and stickers and other good things at janesawyermakes.com. If you can't get a t-shirt or anything right now, don't worry about that. You can still be in my Fake Artist Craft Club. We're gonna make a lot of unreal art together. All right, let's paint a mushroom.
I gave the cap a coat of gesso to prime that silicone I'd used to make the spots. I also tinted a bit of gesso to use on that foam I used for the gills. I just really slapped it in there. I painstakingly painted all those little spots white. Yes, I know they're already white. Then I painted red around each of those spots on the cap. It took a couple of coats to get good coverage there. The stem got a couple coats of off-white. I gave him some freckles off camera, then used some washes and dry brushing to enhance the textures and really bring his face to life. As a last and final touch, when the paint was all dry, I mixed up some of my favorite dollar store 5-minute epoxy to give him some drool. Wearing gloves, I dispensed some epoxy from the double plunger system here into a paper cup and mixed the heck out of it. I used my mixing stick to apply a thin layer of the epoxy into his mouth and onto his lips. I really love this technique. I think it finishes off the whole sculpture and kinda adds to his weirdness. So here he is all done, but as I said earlier, I actually made this to give it away to a stranger. So the day before the Game of Shrooms shroom drop, I drove down to a public park in my nearest bigger city. I posted some hints about where to find him, but I didn't have very many local followers, so he actually sat there for a few days before someone went and got him. The person who found him never reached out. I'm seriously hoping it was someone who appreciates him and not someone who chucked him thinking it was litter, but I guess this is the gamble you take when you do something like this. You can learn more about the Game of Shrooms at yumfactory.com/gameofshrooms or just Google Game of Shrooms.
I'm currently working on my pieces for this year's event. If you're interested in seeing where I hide those, you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, or Pinterest. I'm at Jane Sawyer Makes on all platforms, and I'll be sharing clues as to where I hide my mushrooms locally on there. I will also be shipping out one of the mushrooms I make to one of you guys. The information on how to win that will be in next week's video, so make sure you check that out. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel, and I will see you on the next one.